Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world, one book at a time.
Today, we are tackling a huge question, one that really gets to the heart of how history is made and how societies change.
I mean, really think about that. If your goal was to overthrow a brutal dictator or end a foreign occupation, what's your first move? What tool do you reach for?
For pretty much all of human history, the answer has felt incredibly obvious, right? Power flows from the barrel of a gun. To beat a violent opponent, you've got to be stronger, tougher, more violent. It just kind of makes sense. But what if that gut instinct, that assumption we've held for centuries, is just wrong? Well, that's the crisis in perception that political scientists Erica Chenoweth and Maria J. Stephan decided to tackle head-on in their incredible book, Why Civil Resistance Works. And this is where it gets really interesting. They didn't just come up with a theory. They went out and built a massive data set, one of the biggest of its kind, looking at more than 300 major conflicts between 1900 and 2006. And they basically sorted all of these conflicts into two buckets. In one corner, you have the violent campaigns, armed rebellions, guerrilla wars, that sort of thing. And in the other corner, you've got nonviolent campaigns, which they call civil resistance. This is stuff like organized protests, nationwide strikes, boycotts, mass non-cooperation. So they ran the numbers, and the results were just staggering. Violent campaigns, as you can see, worked out about 26% of the time. But the nonviolent ones, they hit their goals 53% of the time. That is not a small difference. Let me just put that another way. Based on over 100 years of data, nonviolent movements are literally more than twice as likely to succeed as violent ones. And this isn't about morality. It's about strategy, pure and simple. So the big question is, why? How is that possible? Well, the answer boils down to one simple, powerful idea: participation. It turns out the number one thing that determines if a movement will succeed is how many people actively join in. And right there is the killer advantage for nonviolent movements. Think about it. Joining an armed insurgency, that's a huge ask. You have to be physically fit, probably young, and you have to be willing to kill another person. That excludes most people. But in a nonviolent campaign, the barriers to entry are way, way lower. Anybody can participate. Students can walk out of school. Grandmothers can march in the streets. Bureaucrats can slow down the gears of government. Bankers can disrupt the economy. Artists can shape the culture. You see, the movement gets to use the skills of the entire population, not just a handful of fighters. Okay, so what happens when you get that critical mass of people involved? Well, the very foundation of the regime starts to shake. The pillars that hold it up begin to crack. And the most important pillar of all? The military and the police. Just look at these numbers. Nonviolent campaigns are way more likely to cause soldiers and police to actually switch sides. And it makes perfect sense, because when those soldiers are ordered to crack down, they're not looking at enemy combatants. They're looking at their own community. This psychological break is everything. It's the regime's greatest weakness. When the people who are supposed to enforce the ruler's will suddenly refuse to do so, the ruler's power to use force just vanishes into thin air. And it isn't just about the army. When you have widespread strikes, the economy grinds to a halt. When you have mass non-cooperation, the country becomes impossible to govern. The regime loses its money, it loses its legitimacy, and eventually, it just dissolves. Let's try a quick metaphor. Imagine the regime's power is like a giant, impossibly heavy lever. A small band of rebels can try to force that lever with all their might, but it's just too heavy. But what happens when thousands or even millions of regular people all decide to put their hands on that same lever together? The whole dynamic shifts. The combined power of all those hands working together creates a force that is simply overwhelming. It becomes irresistible. So what this research really gives us is a whole new way to think about power and how political change actually happens. It completely redefines the idea of power. Power isn't some magical thing a dictator has. It's a relationship. It's something that is given to the rulers by the people through their consent and their cooperation every single day. And that's maybe the biggest takeaway of all. When enough people decide all at once to take that consent back, the whole system becomes incredibly fragile. And even the toughest, most brutal regimes can shatter, often with shocking speed. So that was just a quick look at the core ideas from Why Civil Resistance Works by the incredible Erica Chenoweth and Maria J. Stephan. If this sparked your curiosity, we really hope you'll dig in deeper. You can read their original research, you can even go online and play with the conflict data yourself, or just see if your local library has a copy of the book. For our full, long-form deep dive into this research and what it all means, just follow the link down in the description. And hey, if you enjoy these explainers, please do subscribe and let us know in the comments what books you think we should tackle next. Thanks for watching.